Reading is actually on the back of your sheets that you have. That's gone out, hasn't it? Yeah, okay. So, it is from Revelation chapter 13. It's a fairly long reading, and it's fairly strange and wondrous, and comes from that final book in the New Testament, book of Revelation. Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. People worshipped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worshipped the beast and asked, "Who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it?" The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise its authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. It was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them, and it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life, the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world. Whoever has ears, let them hear. If anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with a sword they will be killed. This calls for a patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. And I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. And it performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth in full view of the people. Because of the signs it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. It ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great, small, rich, poor, free, slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. Then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb, standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. Nice, easy passage for this morning. Before we get into that, I love playing with the band. We had 14 people this morning, because I include the sound desk guys because they keep us in line. 14 people in the band. Pray for our eternal souls, because it's hard work getting 14 people to play together. They did really well, thank you. This Wednesday is the restart of the prayer meeting, and this week I am leading, and we'll actually do a bit of a Bible study on what we're looking at today and this morning. So if you have your thoughts and your questions and particular dates in mind for when all this is going to occur, then do turn up on Wednesday and let me know what I've said wrong. It will be no more than 45 minutes, and there will be a shorter time of prayer at the end, and we might start doing that once a month as well. So that's this Wednesday online. Okay, you've got your lovely graphic produced by Google LM from my sermon notes, and that's kind of sums up where we're going in all of this. So Decoding 666, the book of Revelation. This was a meme from a few years ago when everything seemed to be going wrong during the good old days of COVID. Me looking outside to see what chapter of Revelation we're doing today. Oh, that was quite good. So we're talking about following the Lamb in a world of beasts, and that requires wisdom. A short story just to frame something in and around what we're thinking this morning. Mara learned the rules without anyone ever saying them out loud. At work, success meant staying late, laughing at the right jokes, and never asking why the numbers mattered more than the people they were supposedly serving. Online, for her it meant having an opinion ready before the story was finished, outraged, neatly packaged between ads. Even weekends felt scheduled for performance, rest that had to be Instagrammed to count, meals that had to be done likewise. For a while she kept up. It was easier, quieter. Then one Tuesday, nothing dramatic happened. She simply didn't join in. She didn't forward the article. I forgot this was up here. She didn't forward the article everyone was sharing. She didn't agree in the meeting when a decision felt wrong. She didn't buy the thing that promised to make her feel complete by Friday. Instead, she went home, cooked slowly, and sat with the discomfort of being slightly out of step. The pressure didn't vanish. It hummed in the background, subtle, persistent. But something else grew louder, a steadiness she hadn't felt in years. The next day, a colleague lingered after the meeting. "I'm glad you said something," he murmured. Another week, someone asked why she seemed calmer lately. Mara didn't have a slogan or a speech. She only knew this: refusing to conform hadn't made her smaller or lonelier. It had made her human again. One person deciding not to conform. Keep Mara in mind as we talk this morning. For centuries, the number of the beast has been a source of fear, speculation, and the plot of many horror films, and not a few songs. I can think off the top of my head at least two rock songs that I know that include it. I suspect there are others. We have seen people try to find this number in everything from barcodes. Remember that in the 1970s? Barcodes are coming, barcodes, microchips. To the names of world leaders. At various points in church history, you only need to do a very brief sojourn in church history to realize how often characters in church history have been mentioned as somehow linked to the beast, whether it's a bad pope or the European Union or to numerous others. However, when we look at the book of Revelation, we see that the Holy Spirit is not inviting us to play a game of scary number bingo. Instead, the Bible tells us that understanding this symbol calls for wisdom. So we're going to try and unwrap it a little bit today. We're not going to go through the whole passage. We're going to focus on just this 666 thing. Somebody a couple of months ago asked me a question about 666, and I realized I'd never preached on this passage in my life, so I thought I'd give it a crack. So I won't name the person, but thank you for having me go down this rabbit hole. First principle that we always have to know when we're reading the Bible. All Bible reading requires understanding what it meant for them before we can find out what it means for us. If you remember nothing else, just remember that, please, because it is so important, because otherwise we become like the cults and we impose our own language interpretations onto the text. You could see that I'm just thinking about the communion and that worm this morning. You probably thought about that worm, little worm. But there was so much more to it because of the culture, because of the time, because of the background. Now, we can't all know that, but we can learn to discover that. We have access to so many resources to help us understand that. We have to understand what it meant for those first hearers. If we don't do this, we end up projecting our own fantasies and fancies onto the text. We end up reading the book of Revelation like we're reading a horoscope. I hope you don't. But you start reading, somebody starts reading the tarot, what's in it for you, what's in the stars, all that sort of stuff. You're just in the same category when you start doing that. So be careful. What did it mean for the first readers? Now, this is particularly difficult for us because it's a strange form of writing. It's called apocalyptic writing. Books like Revelation, Daniel, Ezekiel are what are known as apocalyptic literature. It's kind of, I don't know how to describe it really, but it's 2,500 year old science fiction, fantasy, imagery, allegory, all kinds of stuff going on with it. And it's not from our culture. It speaks of its own time, but not all of it. Look, don't hear me saying, I'm not saying there's nothing about the future. But stage one is to know what it meant for them. I like this tweet somebody put out. Need a big breath for this sentence. I'm just going to read this ancient text that's been interpreted into my language and assume all of my cultural understandings apply, and there's nothing deeper going on and no symbolism anywhere to be found, and also refuse to cross-reference this paragraph I'm reading with any of the other parts of this library that I also believe is true, to see if there could be some nuance here, and you hate God and his word if you aren't reading it the same way as me. Fair enough, really. That's the way you want to go, but it's obviously wrong. So if we treat these visions only as strange predictions of the far future, we're doing what the Apostle Paul called looking for itching ears, having itching ears. Oh, the latest teaching, we've got to find out who's the beast this week, this month, this decade. Treating the Bible like a fantasy novel rather than a guide for life, predicting a dystopian future. And that can be a form of escapism that avoids the real point, a kind of Christian escapism before Netflix and the internet came along. That's not the point. Revelation is not a prediction chart for us to guess the date of the end of the world. I take Jesus at his word, no man knows the hour. It is a discernment manual, Revelation, designed to help believers live faithfully under the pressure of the Roman Empire. I'm happy for you to argue the toss with me on this. That's okay, be wrong. No, I'm kidding. Lots of Christians have different views on this. Characters in this book are not playing hide and seek across the centuries. They were symbols that the first century readers would have recognized immediately. So the point, all Bible reading requires understanding what it meant for them. Okay, so let's get into our cast of characters. The dragon, the beast from the sea, the beast from the earth. To understand the warning, we have to understand the characters. The dragon. Almost certainly, and I won't go into great detail on any of these, almost certainly Satan, the word is a kind of word that can be serpent or dragon, and they interplay with one another. In the Old Testament, that would also be the chaos monster. Chaos monster always to me sounds like a character out of Sesame Street gone bad or something, but anyway, a chaos monster. Or the serpent from the Garden of Eden. His authority is limited by God, but he still tries to influence human history. That's the one behind it all. Second character, the beast from the sea. This is hostile political power. In the first century, this was the Roman Empire, a system that used force and coercion to get its way. So what's the beast from the earth? Well, there seems to be a chain of command going on between these different characters, the dragon, the beast, and the beast. The beast from the earth is a more kind of deceptive power. The first beast uses force. This one uses formation. Doesn't look scary. In fact, it says in the passage it looks lamb-like. Though we later meet the true lamb in chapter 14, verse 1. John, in his book of Revelation, later calls it the false prophet because it uses persuasion, ideology, and religion to support the first beast and ultimately the dragon. The dragon gives power to the beast, and the beast tries to shape the world into false worship. The authority of evil world powers is derived from the evil one. Now, none of that's particularly controversial in I would say 95% of scholarship. That's where we're going. So you've got devil, power of empire, just physical power, and the power of ideology going on. Okay. The thing with the beast from the earth is more dangerous, is more subtle. It influences, there's a word for the time. Hiding in plain sight, just like that fox in the middle of a hunting pack. Just like that image with the sheep there. We often fear violence, understandably. But the Bible suggests that persuasion is a more dangerous tool than force. The first beast forces, obey or you're going to suffer. This creates martyrs. And as the early Christians noted, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. It was whack-a-mole for the Roman Empire killing the Christians. You kill one, two pop up. Violence actually only made this church stronger. I think there's about one exception in church history to that, where the church was totally annihilated, and that was in Japan until the last few hundred years. But the second beast uses persuasion. It says this is the right thing to do. It'd be wise to join with this lesser evil to prevent a greater one. It uses common sense, economic savvy, political wisdom to lure people in. It doesn't rule by fear, but by compromise and conformity. Compromise is one of those things you have to do sometimes, because life is not straightforward and neat and tidy. But ultimately, we have to be aware of the line that goes from compromise to conformity. The final beast, reframes the restrictions as virtues, telling us that giving up our values is for our own good. This is kind of influence that lasts longer, because it provides a kind of moral cover for all kinds of things the system does wrong. Helps us avoid the hard challenges of Jesus say in the Sermon on the Mount. To love enemies, to welcome the stranger. It makes us look over there at the thing we fear while quietly picking our pockets while we rage at that thing over there. This is what every sensible person knows, they say. The first beast uses force, that's Roman power. The second beast uses formation. People fear the first beast, but they are lured by the second. So that's where we've gone. Dragon, symbol of Satan's cosmic rebellion. Beast from the sea, hostile political power, coercive power of empire and state. Beast from the earth, the persuasive power of a kind of subtle ideology that forms us and shapes us. This is Revelation's imagery, and it's a critique of the powers arrayed against God's kingdom people, not primarily a coded puzzle to identify a future individual. So what's the meaning of the mark? One of the most misunderstood parts of Revelation is this mark of the beast. People often look for literal tattoos. I do that, frankly, when you're coming in. If there's a visitor to church, I double check, just that you've not got any tats on you. The first readers, though, would have understood this as a sign of loyalty. That's what marks were. There's a few backgrounds that could go into this. This is certainly one of them. In the ancient world, slaves could be branded. And soldiers were sometimes marked on their hands. The idea of the hand could actually be the whole lower arm, really, as well. And soldiers would often have a brand that made it part of their oath to the emperor. And the emperor's seal was on commercial documents. And his face was on coins. You couldn't trade without handling the emperor's money, because it said on there Caesar Augustus or the divine Caesar. The claim to deity was on the very money they were handling all the time. A man claiming to be God. The mark on the forehead and the right hand is actually a parody. Although it has cultural background in the Roman Empire, it's a parody of God's law. How so? What do the Jews have on their forearms, on their foreheads? What are they called? Phylacteries and tefillin. Inside was the word of God. Bound to their foreheads. Deuteronomy 6:8. It's symbolic before it's anatomical. The forehead represents attention, what you keep before your eyes. It's your identity, what marks you publicly, and what guides your actions. Ancient people weren't saying, this is where neurons fire. They were saying, this is what governs how I see and how I live. What about the mark on the hand and the forearm? This represents our actions and our energy. It's about our work. Thinking about agency, the arm is meant to represent what you do, your action, your behavior, your obedience lived out, your strength, your capacity. The arm is where power is exercised, your energy. So it can say in Exodus 6 verse 6, with a mighty hand and outstretched arm, the Lord will rescue you. It speaks of your loyalty, to bind the Torah to your arm. Actually, I'm a right-hander, so it would be on the left arm. To receive the mark of the beast is not to get a physical stamp, but to have your mind, your habits shaped by systems that oppose Jesus. It is a question of where your loyalties lie, not just what you say you believe, but how you live. We don't need to be too literalistic, and I'll tell you why in a second. It's metaphor. We don't have any difficulty using the language of marking without being literal, even in English. She's a marked woman, or he's a marked man. We use that phrase, don't we? I've marked his cards. I can't quite remember what that means, but I know it. Anyway, he carries the mark of Cain. We're not being literal, we're saying it's symbolic. Something deeper than something on your skin. In fact, the text says so literally in the next chapter. This is why we've got to read around a passage of Scripture. Chapter 14, verse 1. The faithful have the Father's name written on their foreheads. I've got it up there. Yahweh. Yod Het Vav. Yahweh. Jehovah. Does it mean we're all going to get branded when we get to heaven? I don't think so. Just the symbol of completeness, of being connected, of being loyalty to the Lord. Okay. The math of incompleteness. Wow, there's a lot of numbers in Revelation. And I hate maths. And apologies to the Americans, it's maths. No. In the ancient world, numbers were symbols. In Jewish thought, 7 is the number of perfection and completeness. It is the number of the Sabbath, the day of rest, where we stop working and trust in God. 144,000 faithful ones over there in chapter 14, verse 1. 144,000 equals 12 times 12 times 1,000. Well done. Top of the class. 12 is a symbolic number of God's people. 12 tribes of Israel, 12 apostles. 12 times 12, the whole people of God, old and new covenant together. 1,000 is a number of fullness, of vastness, of completeness. So all these symbolic numbers shout all God's people, fully included, lacking nothing. It doesn't mean there's literally going to be 144,000. It's a number of, it's a symbolic number of wholeness and completeness. So when the Jehovah's Witnesses come knocking at your door, talking about 144,000, do like I did one time and say, how do you know you're in the 144,000? Because there's already more than 144,000 Jehovah's Witnesses. You might want to rethink your interpretation. All God's people, fully included, lacking nothing. This is the idea of these numbers. God's perfection, number 7. Then what's number 6? Falling short. 6 is creation without rest. It is work without a Sabbath. Yee. It is striving without ever reaching the goal. 6 is Friday work with no promise of a Saturday lie-in. 6 is close but no cigar. Any cigar? No, I won't ask that one. 6 is coming fourth in the Olympics. That's a bit mean because you did very well to come fourth in the Olympics, but okay, you don't get on the podium. When Revelation gives the number 666, it uses a Hebrew technique where repeating a word 3 times makes it the ultimate version. Except it's like the ultimate version of failure. So what's the number for the ultimate version of success? Holy, holy, holy. 7, 7, 7. Therefore, 666 represents ultimate incompleteness. It describes human power trying to be godlike. Remember those coins we talked about, but failing spectacularly. The beast is a parody of God. It can demand authority, but it can never give peace. It is eternally stuck at 6, always grasping, always wanting more, never reaching rest. The number is certainly a code for the Roman emperor. Here's another number thing. Guess what you get when you put the numbers. Okay, numbers and letters was a thing my kids used to do, something to do with, I think that was Sesame Street. Maybe I've got that in the brain at the moment. When they were kids, and there were numbers and letters. Numbers and letters went together. So in Hebrew you had Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, etc., etc. That'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on and so forth. So 666, you put the letters for Nero, Caesar together, and guess what number you get? 666. It was specific to the time, even if it overflows in reflection through the centuries. Now, there is another side to that. When the Bible, which was written in Greek, gets translated into Latin, they changed that because it doesn't quite work in Latin, so they made it 616 in Latin. So if you've ever heard, it's not 666, it's 616. If you heard all that stuff before, and some of you are glazing over, I can see that look in your faces. That's the reason for that. Just to keep you awake, 666 is a number of the beast. 664 is the number of the beast next door neighbor. I just thought I'd throw that one. So what John's saying here is that Nero looks like a god, but he's just a man. He's a 6, he's not a 7. You know, I worked out my name, the name Julian in English, 670. Depending on the method, that was a bit too close for comfort. Or it could be 6, 7, which according to Revelation is almost perfect. Just saying, okay? These are what are called deviled eggs, produced by the chicken of doom. Sorry. Keep you all awake here. Okay, come on, let's keep moving. Here's a few things that occur in society that are basically beastly systems that reflect some of this. Moving aside from the whole trying to identify the beast into the reality that it's a system that shapes us and forms us. Here's a few things that occur to me in our world. Hyper-consumerism. This system tells us you are what you buy. The mark on the hand is the pressure to endlessly produce and to consume. I went to Vodafone the other week, and as soon as I said there's something wrong with my phone, you know what they started to do, right? Here's the brand new spanking. No. I just want you to. I know it can be fixed. If I won't go to you, I'll find someone who can fix it. And yeah, trying to sell us a new. And in our culture, new is good, old is bad by definition. Who's the oldest here? I'm not sure. That's utter rubbish. We don't always need the new things. Nationalism fused with a religion. When national pride is wrapped up in sacred language to justify violence or exclusion, when it's wrapped up in the flag, it mimics the Roman Empire. When the cross becomes an accessory for a flag, the lamb has been replaced by the beast. Beware of the creep of nationalism, even in this country. Beware of the creep of Christian nationalism. Talk to my Sue about it. She's running a conference on it in the next few months where a whole bunch of academics are coming together to talk about it. Discerning beastly systems, technocracy and algorithms. Technology isn't evil, but it becomes beastly when it reduces humans to data points. It numbers people rather than naming them. We have a name in Revelation chapter 14, verse 1. It is the name of the Lord is on our head, not a number. Then we have our media systems often try to keep us in a constant state of crisis, like I said earlier. We only respond to fear, and that seems to be the order of the day. We You only need one piece of fearful news to counteract 10 good pieces of news. Fear of scarcity, fear of danger, fear of scarcity. Even in the desert, the Hebrews were not to fear scarcity. Oh, that person's coming to take your piece of the pie. Sabbath is there to teach us that overwork will not make us more secure, just more fearful that I've not got enough yet. The media makes us scared of the enemy within and without, to focus on questionable outsiders and strangers. But Jesus' most repeated command is, do not be afraid. The Good Samaritan teaches us of someone who extended love in the most vulnerable of settings where he could have been ambushed himself. Sue, my wife, worked with boat refugees, many of whom were Christians, fleeing persecution from various places, including Iran. A friend of ours knew the horrors of what happened there. I won't repeat them to you, both in Iran and in the boats. I baptized an Iranian refugee in Westgate, got to know others when I was in Westgate. I don't have neat policy answers on border security. We have to have border security. We have to have secure borders. But if we get sucked into the fear and scapegoating of others, that's 666 all over again. And that is precisely what the German church leaders faced in 1934 when they were seduced, the majority of them, by Adolf Hitler and his charm and his apparent wisdom to pick out this particular group called the Jews, or the Gypsies. Or now we'll move on to this group, the trade unionists. And Bonhoeffer and Niemöller and other pastors said, no, this is unchristian. So test your allegiance. Reclaim your imagination. I have run out of time. We won't do the last song. Pastors preach too long. Reclaim your imagination. Test your allegiance. Ask yourself what can never be questioned in your life. If a political party, a job, or a lifestyle demands unquestioned loyalty, that is a beastly trait. Do a life audit. The language of forehead and forearm echoes the book of Deuteronomy, where God's people were to bind the law to their foreheads and their arms, symbolizing that their thoughts and actions belong to God. This is the covenant God. He's not changed. He expects our imagination to be caught up and to be trained to be caught up, to be trained to notice the presence of God, to re-identify again and again and again with our baptismal identity as a child of God. This is my beloved daughter. This is my beloved son. Before anything else. Change your practices. How you spend your time, your money, your energy, what you let define your worth. The screens. Take a break. Take a break. Do the best you can to take a break. I saw an item on ABC News yesterday talking about how oldies are all getting addicted to their phone screens. Not just a young person's problem. And what is it feeding you? What is it feeding you? Whatsoever is lovely, whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is kind, is it feeding that stuff? The false leader. Jesus said, by their fruits you will know them. It's not their great deeds or political prowess that is the measure. And they will say, oh, didn't we do all these great things, cast out demons? Surely that's good. No, says Jesus, the measure is not the spectacular policy success, but the content of their character. Back to the fruit of the Spirit again. That leader or podcaster or influencer you're following, who is the enemy they name? That will tell you. Who do they tell you to fear or what to fear? Not everything, but something. That will be clue you in, tune you in. Tune in your discernment radar according to Jesus' standards, not political expedience. We are coming to an end. You are named. You are not numbered. You have a name. Book of Revelation was written to comfort a suffering church, not to terrify it. It reminds us that while beastly systems look unstoppable sometimes, they are actually hollow. They're stuck at 6. The beast may look like a 7, but it's only a 6. They can promise power, but they can never offer the peace of the Sabbath. The beast may strut and think it's in charge. Religion and politics may put Jesus to death, but religion and politics are just a 6. The beast tries to turn you into a number, a producer, a consumer, or a data point. But the Lamb does the opposite. He names you Yahweh's. He offers a relationship, not a transaction. The ownership is on your forehead. It's not a number. Yahweh is the best name. I don't know, you remember a few years ago we did that breath prayer where you breathe in on Yahweh. Let's just try that. And aside from the very biological thing of it being calming because you're taking a deeper breath, it's just one way among many, just to center yourself on to whom you belong. As you go out into the world and this week and you come across the empires of the world, political, economic, digital, they may look like a 7, but they're only a 6. Everyone might say, well, hey, you've got to do this, you've got to follow that, you've got to see this. No. We have a better number. So let's just pause, close our eyes. Sometimes this week you will slip into beastly moments. You'll find yourself buying the narrative of consumerism or the narrative of outrage. Outrage on the left or outrage on the right. Don't really care. Sometimes you'll find yourself doing dark stuff or getting sucked and tempted towards dark stuff. Maybe you just want to, at that moment this coming week, just breathe in that prayer, Yahweh. A single word prayer, naming the name of God, is more powerful than the greatest dark. Scripture says it has not yet been revealed who we are, but when we see him, we shall know. We shall see him as he is. It will be revealed. And yet we get a glimpse here. We are set apart for good works of service, for serving the King, for being stewards in a dark world where there are beastly systems of money and power. Lord, we would be a people who live as ambassadors in this world, ambassadors of another kingdom, of another empire, the empire of the King of Kings. God, would you help us to be that this week, to honor your name in all that we do and say, to live in grace with all whom we meet. Lord, would you help us, fill us with your Spirit, name us afresh, help us to have that sense of being marked with the life of Christ. That even if these words that we've read today do at some point speak of a specific figure too, maybe they do, maybe they don't, we at least have lived the life, if that happens in our lifetime, where we're ready for it, because we're already living in the coming kingdom. So God, help us to be faithful in a fallen world, serving in a self-service world, stewarding in a creation that needs stewards. Go in the grace of Christ. Go knowing you are loved by God. Go knowing that he has called you by name. He has made you his child, his son, his daughter, his servant, his ambassador, his friend. Go knowing that the Spirit of God is with you. Amen. But before you do go, stick around for a cup of coffee.